UN Convention on the Rights of the Child, which Guyana has signed on to, states that a child has a right to a good quality education and should be encouraged to go to school to the highest level that child may wish to. Some information from the Rights of the Child Commission.
And as promised, we will be speaking with the Minister of Human Services and Social Security, Dr. Vindhya Persaud. It's Child Protection Week here in Guyana. Minister Persaud, welcome to 103.1 FM.
Good morning to you and all the listeners, and thank you so much for having me on your program this morning.
Well, Minister, for those who are now hearing about Child Protection Week or may have already heard, what's the theme of this year's observance?
This year we are moving forward under the theme, Together, Let's Keep Them Safe, with the emphasis on the word together.
And what was the idea behind this theme?
As you know, child abuse is pervasive, and we have seen the reports so far this year, and the number of reported cases stands at 1,918. And we have also been very cognizant of the fact that the COVID-19 pandemic would have seriously depleted the avenues for reporting because more children are home and perhaps in closer proximity to those who perpetrate abuse on them. So we are very, very aware that much more needs to be done. While we are on the ball with public awareness, we are encouraging reporting, and that's where the together comes in. If people are aware of cases of child abuse, we would like to encourage them to report, because this is an issue that cannot be dealt with singularly by the Ministry of Human Services and Social Security, and by extension, the Child Protection Agency. We need every hand on deck. We need everyone to be vigilant when it comes to the safety and security of children. You know, if people are thinking that something is a bit off, something doesn't seem right, usually it isn't. So it's better to err on the side of caution and report it. So that's one aspect of the together, reporting. And of course, our 914 hotline has made it easier for people to report. They do not have to provide proof of abuse, nor do they have to provide details about themselves. They simply need to report the matter and give us the identification, things that we need to get into the matter, whether it's the name of the child, the location, however we can find that child and intervene. But it's also making sure that people are aware of the signs of child abuse and how it occurs and how it affects children, and more importantly, to be aware of it in the maybe locations that they might not think that it's happening, maybe very close to them in their homes, in their inner circle, you know, that kind of thing, so that people who do this kind of atrocity, who commit offenses like child abuse, they are called out. We must have zero tolerance for it. We must not get into the habit of letting it slide for any reason whatsoever. That's the emphasis on together.
Minister, you talked earlier about the latest statistics up to about June this year, showing that Guyana has recorded just about 1,900 or so reported cases. How important has been your 914 line in getting in some of those reports?
It has been important, not as many as we would like to see. However, what we have found, and yesterday I had a meeting with the team that deals with 914, and what we were finding when we looked through the figures was that a lot of children are calling 914, but they're calling it as a prank call or just calling 914, not necessarily to report cases of abuse. We treat every call seriously, so the operators would engage. So while we are happy the children are familiar with 914, and of course adults are calling in to report on child abuse and domestic violence cases, we want to really, really appeal to the public out there to not misuse the number. And if your child is aware of 914, which is a good thing, we just want you to let them know the seriousness of 914. So when they call, it must be to report a case of abuse.
In your message, you pointed to the likelihood of, some of these child abuses being perpetrated online, largely because most of the students are at home now due to the COVID pandemic. Out of that 1,900 or so reported cases, have you been able to pick up any trend that suggests that more people are abusing children online, going after them? It may be, for sexual predation or whatever the case might be.
Well, we have not been able to pick up that through 914. We have been able to pick some of that up through reports in other ways, maybe directly through our Facebook page, or people will come in or call the agency and we would have that kind of thing. We also notice it a lot in the system where people are learning, in that, if people are teaching, sometimes they get into the habit of that thing that we call grooming. We have had a few cases like that. And, those are things that we have to be vigilant about, in the sense that parents have to be constantly asking their children when they're being taught, or if they're in a mentorship group, or if they're in a group where there are differences in age, what are the kinds of conversations that they're having. The WhatsApp is also used for a lot of things, and we are finding a lot of that happening also on WhatsApp. But again, it's not through 914. These would be through direct reports.
And do you have any figure in mind as to let us gauge how prevalent is this among the larger block of reported cases?
No, we don't have reports on it. As I said, these are not like a number of reports. These are like one-off reports, because I believe, and this is something that maybe people are not aware of, I believe a lot of people are not aware that this can happen, that when school is on, or when learning is on, and when training is on, when those things are on, that this kind of activity can happen, inappropriate conversations that could lead to other things, predatorship, for want of a better word. So people have to be very conscious of what's happening, and it's a good practice to continually engage the youngster that you have at home to see what's happening. I mean, if you have a good relationship, maybe to even look at some of the messages that are coming in. Well, I do know people can delete and erase messages. I do know that. But if it is at all possible, because what we have been privy to would have been given to us by parents.
Minister, in your statement, you also alluded to a 3-year program or a plan of action that will be launched sometime later this week. What is essentially going to be the major features of this 3-year program?
We are calling it Every Child Safe. And this should not be an elusive thing, because what we are saying is that there must be zero tolerance for child abuse, and that everywhere children are, they must be protected. And the intent of this is to go beyond public awareness in terms of PSAs and other types of announcements and awareness information. This is direct engagement with communities. Some of this would have already been piloted, and we are seeing some good results from this, in that we will have teams going into communities and villages and having direct interface with all the members of the communities, including children. There we will have the opportunity to teach, to educate, to gain feedback, and to gain insight into particular communities. Now, we have gotten some information out of some studies, some polls, some anecdotal information as well, on which communities have the most prevalent numbers. And so we will be looking at those and heading into those communities starting this week, working with the communities with the intent of fanning this out over 3 years. So we will try to touch as many communities as we can. If it needs to run longer, it will run longer. Once the communities are engaged, and engaged at all the different levels, as I would have mentioned to you, including counseling, if and when necessary, we will ask those communities to pledge to keep children safe and to be part of a larger network of people who are part of the Every Child Safe campaign, so that they will report, they will definitely investigate not in an obvious apparent way, but so we will know what is happening, and they will always be very conscious to look out for children. And this will also morph into a lot of other features that I will launch later on in the year, and I'll tell you then when we do those things. But it's looking at ensuring that there are spaces within the community where children can be kept safe in the event that their parents are not around or they don't have a place to go between certain hours, because we are also tackling through this program what we see regularly at stoplights and on the streets, children out on the roads. And this is a problem that's been bothering me deeply, because you see very little children out there on the road, and when we investigate, as we have been doing, as we have been trying to remove them from the road, we find that most of these children have parents and have homes. So we have been working with the parents, too, of these children. So it's going to be touching on a lot of areas under this broader theme of abuse.
To what extent, Minister, as we head up to the 8 o'clock hour, have you been paying attention to those parents who essentially exploit their children on the basis of sympathy from the public so that they can be offered monies? I'm essentially talking here about people who are begging in the streets and having their children with them and using them as a means of gaining public sympathy. Have you been paying attention to that? And does that fall into the category of child abuse?
Yes, very much so. It's exploitation. Sometimes it could be labor exploitation if they're sending their child to work. It could also be exploitation if they're sending their child to beg, and it's definitely exploitation when they're using their children to gain money. And we have had them on our radar. We have been picking them up from off the streets. In fact, if we are to go the very harsh way, we can charge those parents, and I'm hoping it doesn't come to that. But we have been picking them up. We've been putting them in shelters. We've been trying to work with them, but it might come to that point. So what we will be doing is having, through this 3-year program, intense public awareness, because we want the public to not dole out money. We want the public to report these things. If you see it, report it. If you're out there and you see that there is a hot spot where children are congregating and on the streets, and they shouldn't be, they're unsupervised, or if you see someone using their child routinely to gain sympathy or to gain financial benefit, well, then you should report it, because we will be there to pick up these children and their parents and work with them. But I'm hoping it doesn't come to the point where we have to take harsher measures.
Minister, thank you very much. We've been speaking there with Minister of Human Services and Social Security, Dr. Vindhya Persaud, on the occasion of Child Protection Week 2021. Have a great day to you and your staff.
Thank you so much, and thanks for having me on the program. Remember, everybody, together, let's keep them safe.